Good evening, everybody! The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with another Are You In? Now, the Are You Ins for tonight and for Sunday are loosely themed. The theme is I'm looking at two albums from two artists that have recently dropped albums. I'm talking about within the last year. So this came as a surprise, but I wanted to see what they can do in such short time. So tonight's Are You In is going to be King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's newest album entitled Infest, the Rat's Nest. Yes, that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. This psychedelic rock band from Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, had recently dropped an album earlier this year in April, and I had reviewed it for the channel. As my first introduction into this band, I really enjoyed the boogie rock sound that they had on here, and there was mostly hits with some misses. And I was, of course, curious to see what else they can do. This is now their 15th album, and I grossly underestimated the actual style of this band. This band, from now what I understand, has done multiple different experimentations throughout all of their albums, and this one is a thrash metal album. You heard me right. Perfect segue from boogie rock. We got thrash metal. This one coming in very cleanly with 9 tracks and about 35 minutes worth of material. So I hunkered down, listened to a bunch of times, and I'm very on the fence with this album. But let's go through it track by track because it's pretty quick. First off, we have Planet B, which gets us into the feel of what this album is going to be. It's very reminiscent of early thrash metal. We're talking about the likes of Metallica, of Megadeth, of Slayer, even a little bit of Black Sabbath on here. This particular song hits more of the Metallica edge of the thrash metal. The other really interesting thing that you're going to see throughout this album is production of it. Even with this being a thrash metal album, the production kind of suits that particular style. It harkens back to the early Black Sabbath albums, but it also reminds me a little bit of Jethro Tull and King Crimson, where it's a little bit muddled, it's a little bit sludgy in the production, and the reverb is high, making for a very interesting callback to that era of music. This starts off pretty well, very fast paced. Stu McKenzie is also imitating the style of vocals from this era, very much reminiscent of a James Hetfield, growly vocals, a little bit mumbled at times, with a lot of power, and he does it pretty well. It is a little bit cheesy when you hear it comparatively to what the last album was, but he does a valiant effort, and at least he keeps it up for the whole entire album. Starting this, you're also realizing that yes, this is also another themed album. This one also dealing with talks about climate change, and with this being a thrash metal album, having a more of a apocalyptic nature. The whole entire album deals with our world is basically coming to an end. The rich are going to Mars because they are the only ones that can afford it, so everyone else is doomed on planet Earth, not wanting to live in general because of just how much of a shit show the Earth is. Some people are deciding to mutilate and kill themselves because it's better to be gone than to be living in this world. Others are succumbing to the superbug that is going on that can't be killed by antibiotics because everyone is using antibiotics for ridiculous means, so now everyone succumbs to the superbug. But there's a few handful that decide to try to test their luck and live on Venus. If you know anything about the planets, you know that that's a really, really dumb idea because it is inhospitable. The atmosphere is horrible for human life. These explorers decide to leave Earth when the Earth is closest to the Sun, because that is also when it's closest to Venus. That's where we get with perihelion. As we get to Venusian 2, these explorers finally hit Venus, and guess what? They all burn to death as they hit the atmosphere. So they die, they make it to hell, but somehow they also come back from hell and storm Mars and kill the rich people. Pretty dark, pretty tongue-in-cheek at times, but a very interesting concept that I can get around for, a pretty sparse album. Moving on, we have Mars for the Rich, and this is where more of the Black Sabbath comes in. This song has a little bit more of a swung idea with the eighth, so it feels a little bit more gallopy, which is kind of reminiscent to what Black Sabbath has done in the past. I enjoy a lot of this song, and it is one of my favorites. The melody is one of the best. What I also really enjoy here is that there's a part where the arrangement breaks down, you get a little bit more of an atmospheric bridge, and then you get this guitar line that is very reminiscent of what Black Sabbath would do. This is one of the times where you get a little bit of a break from the breakneck speed of some of these songs. Also, the layered drumming on this particular song is fantastic, especially when we get to that bridge part. It makes for one of the standout drum parts on this album. Next up, we have Organ Farmer. This is a song where people are wanting to mutilate and decompose themselves, so that's fun for the family. This song is one of the shortest ones on here. That one and Venetian 2 are two of the shortest songs, but also two of the weakest songs. It just doesn't really bring much to the table to me. I do enjoy the latter half of Organ Farmer. I like the rhythmic nature of the melody, and I like the more galloping nature of that particular part. But the beginning feels kind of bare bones. This is where another one of these problems arise with this album. There is a bunch of times where you get these guitar interludes between verses, and it's almost the same thing every time. It's these really fast guitar solos with chromatic nature, and it's just like hammer-ons and pull-offs. Very typical of what you would hear on certain thrash metal songs, but it's never any different. It just feels like they're padding just to pad for this particular thing, and it feels kind of like painting by numbers when it comes to thrash metal, where it's like, okay, we have this really chugging guitar going on, we have an interesting riff, we get to the chorus, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, guitar solo, we have to have a really quick guitar solo, then rinse and repeat. This is one of the times where it feels like that comes up, and it is kind of annoying to me. Next up, we have Superbug, another one that feels a little bit more like a Black Sabbath song. This is very sludgy, it's very slow, it's also very bluesy as well, which is a really nice touch. This is reminiscent of when like rock and blues were finally delving into this metal. It is the longest song on the album. There are a few times where it feels like it gets stagnant, but I do enjoy the moments where it pans away from the melody and the lyrics and goes for a little bit more of a bluesy side. The part that I think most of is when the drums are quiet, the bass is quiet, leaving room for this guitar to have this nice little bluesy moment, and then it goes back into it. Venetian 1 is where we get to the latter half of the album where people start leaving Earth. This one stands out for a particular reason that a lot of these songs stand out for. There are times on some of these arrangements where the meter changes and is a little bit different, so it stands out from a pretty formulaic thrash metal song. This particular one is really funky with the verse parts, where it feels like the vocals come in different parts while everyone else is trying to keep a 4/4 meter, but I'm not exactly 100% sure with where it is in terms of the timing, so if you figured it out, I would love to hear it. But what is also cool is the chorus part is 5 measures of 3/4. And what happens while that's happening is the guitar parts are on the offbeat, which makes for what feels a little bit like a 4/4 in a 3/4, and it makes for some really interesting timing. What also is really cool is that the last part, you have the rest of the band chanting Venetian 1 with each of its syllables, which is 5 syllables, which means 1 syllable per measure, which makes for a really cool addition to what they are doing. Planet B also plays around with the timing, where the main riff is in 7/4. Going on, we have Perihelion, which also plays around with the timing. First off, the main riff is in 7/4, and then the verse ideas, the actual lyrics, go from 8/4 to 7/4 to 6/4. So as each idea happens, one beat is taken off. The chorus itself is a little bit weird for this album. I feel like it would have been a little bit more reminiscent of something off of the last album, but still all around one of the better songs on the album. Then we get to Venetian 2, and this to me is another filler song. It's shorter, but it doesn't really do much. It reminds me a lot of Metallica's Whiplash, and not as interesting. Yes, it's a little bit faster, but the guitar parts feel again a little bit paint by numbers, and it just leaves no real impression to me. Self-Immolate, though, really, really cool song, and it has to be for a song that's literally about going to Venus and immediately getting burned alive. If you have a song like that, you need to make it the most badass song on the album, and it really is. It is the fastest, it's the heaviest song on the album, the hardest hitting, and there's a lot of really cool ideas on here. The main verses are in 15/16, which also plays around with the drums timing. So first time it feels off the beat, and then it feels on the beat, and then doesn't feel on the beat again. And then there's also a really interesting main riff that plays with the timing in comparison to the drums, which is also mimicked in the chorus melody. Really, really cool, really fast-paced, and the best song on the album. And also, the intro is super cool. The drum solo is fantastic. Reminds me of an older Metallica song. Probably reminds me most of Dyer's Eve, if I was to pick a particular song, where the drums come in and then it just clicks into place. That being said, when you have a song like Hell as your closer, you should probably have it as a standout song. To me, it doesn't. There really isn't anything that stands out to me. It kind of takes away some of the energy that was already there for Self-Immolate, and it just doesn't do anything interesting to me. It does have a nice false ending, and then eventually goes into this part for like 15 seconds. This is a little bit slower and a little bit more interesting guitar work, which made me think, where the hell was this for the rest of the album? It came off as kind of a little bit of a frustrating ending to me. A lot of these songs are pretty similar in style, except for Mars for the Rich and Superbug. The production's similar, the style's similar, the vocals are very similar, they're kind of one note. You have a lot of these times where these guitar fills are coming in, which feels very similar. The main riffs on a lot of this stuff are interesting and play with the time signatures, which is definitely needed on this album. But what I think is frustrating is I can go either way with this particular album. I can see it as a very fun album that doesn't take itself too seriously, that has an interesting message but doesn't beat you over the head with it, kind of comical but also informative. I can also see this as a paint-by-numbers thrash metal, and I find it frustrating that way because when I think back to some of my favorite thrash metal songs, you have interesting arrangements. Yes, you got that really in-your-face, a lot of flair, a lot of just fast tempo riffs, and those are really cool. But for every one of those, you also have an interesting intro that builds the world of what this song is. Going with Metallica, you got Battery, you got And Justice for All, you have any of the instrumentals, even Enter Sandman. It's not the most complex arrangement, but you have something that builds really well. Going to Megadeth, Sweating Bullets has a phenomenal opener that sets the tone and also changes up the pace sometimes with the solo and the slower sections. Even when it comes to like War Pigs by Black Sabbath or Hallowed Be Thy Name by Iron Maiden, you have interesting guitar licks and stuff that is very memorable. There aren't many guitar licks that are very memorable for me on this album. It just feels like all of it's very same. And that's where I think my problem lies the most, is I would love to have seen a little bit more depth with the arrangement. To me, it like borders that line of fun and parody. And that's not a bad thing. It can be parody if it wants to be. If you're trying to make an homage to thrash metal, it's good. It just could have been much better. And that's, I think, where I lie with this. Still, it's 35 minutes long, it's 9 tracks. It is a lot of fun, even if it is very unoriginal throughout most of the album. And the ideas are interesting, so I would still say listen to it once. If you are wanting to see what this band can do, they can do pretty much anything. If you can go from boogie to thrash metal, they can basically do anything. But be warned, once you hear it once, you don't really need to hear it again. There isn't much here that makes you want to go back to it. It's a fun little morsel, but if you want to get real thrash metal, check out all the big four. Check out Iron Maiden. Check out Black Sabbath. These are the quintessential people that you should look into, and you can see why I believe that this is a little bit bare bones comparatively to these particular bands. But that's my time. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you love or hate this album and your reasons why. Let me know other albums from 2019 that you'd like me to review. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel. That way I know that you enjoy what I do and want to see this channel become bigger and better for the future. So I'll be back with another 5-minute theory, and then Sunday I'll be back with another RUN from another band, or should I say artist, that recently put out some music. But until then, this is Music Fan, and I'm signing off.